Hey kids, with big innovation comes big success. Well, I was talking about Windows 95, but that could work too. I mean, come on. This is one of the most installed pieces of software in the world. With its innovative and easy to use design, no wonder it became a smash hit and still remembered fondly by many young kids today. But how did it come to be? Because its story and its development are a lot more complicated than the other versions I've taken a look at. So, without further ado, here's the story of Windows 95. March 1992. Windows 3.1 is soon to be released, and both Windows NT 3.1 and Windows for Workgroup 3.11 are under heavy development. Microsoft was planning 2 releases of Windows to be next. Cairo was going to be a high-end OS built off of the already solid base of Windows NT, and a low-end, consumer-focused successor to Windows 3.1, codenamed Chicago. Fun fact, Chicago was originally going to be called Windows NT Lite, as seen in this internal Microsoft email. Yeah, I have to agree with Steve Ballmer here. NT Lite's a fucking stupid name. But then again, I have to agree with Steve Ballmer on everything.
No, it's just $99!
Yep. Damn right. The plan was to develop a 32-bit underlying kernel and file system with 32-bit protected mode device drivers in Workgroup 3.11 to be used in Chicago. Cairo was also going to have a brand new user interface, as well as an object-based file system. Cairo was eventually scrapped, but elements of it were featured in Windows NT 4.0, released in 1996. The object-based file system would later evolve into WinFS in Longhorn, which was also cancelled. Interestingly, there's one build of Cairo available, build 1175. It has the object-based file system, but it has the branding of Windows NT Server 4.0 Beta. What could this mean? Was Cairo going to become another SKU of NT 4.0? Who knows? Anyways, let's just take a look at Chicago. First up is build 07200022. Now what could that build number mean? Well, it's actually a date stamp. This build was compiled on July 20th, 1992 at 12:22 a.m. or 0022 in a 24-hour format. This build is a lot like Windows for Workgroup 3.11, build 014E, the build it was based off of. However, it has some major differences, such as the inclusion of some 3D elements that would later be featured in Windows 95. It also has some more apps, like Raster, which is, as the name implies, a raster graphics editor, or Task List, which is an early version of the Task List feature in 95. There was some updated stuff as well, such as a new file manager, which enables right-clicking for drive files and folders. There were some usability testing builds compiled sometime around December 1992/January 1993, and featured a very, very early version of the Windows Explorer, which we'll take a look at in a bit. The only time these builds were ever shown was in this video. It's very low quality, so everything's a bit hard to make out. Build 58S is a Milestone 4 build, compiled on August 9th, 1993. Setup is very different, looking more like Windows 3.1's GUI setup. The boot screen is very cool. It's the Microsoft Chicago test with a red light shining above the G. The Windows flag flashes around the screen in different colors. The logon window is interesting. It says Chicago Networking on the title bar, but still mentions Windows for Workgroups in the window. This warning pops up when you start Chicago, warning you that it's under construction. Now that we have a better look at this early UI, let's explore it. The start menu that we know now is split up into 3 menus. The left menu is the start menu, which looks different from the final menu. The button is just the Windows flag, as opposed to the Windows flag and the start text, and the menu itself looks more bland, looking like a regular context menu. In the UTBs, the icon was a computer instead. The center menu is the Find menu, and the right menu is the Help menu. Find and Help would later just be bundled with the Start menu in Windows 95. Minimize applications go above the taskbar instead of on the taskbar. So what's the point of this area here then? Well, it's actually a folder showing the files in the desktop folder on it. The desktop icons are also different. File Explorer is File Cabinet, and Network Neighborhood is just called Network. Your programs are in a folder on the desktop, and the recycle bin is called recycle.bin. In the UTBs, it's called Wastebasket. The actual windows look different too. The control menu is still there, but now we have these big, meaty, maximize and minimize buttons to the right. And of course, we have this under construction wallpaper on the desktop. And now for the features that are new to this build. The MS-DOS base that Chicago runs on has been updated to 7.0. If this build is installed alongside Windows 3.1, it can run the Windows 3.1 installation in a window, kind of like a VM. There's also 32-bit versions of Clock and Notepad, called clock32.exe and note32.exe respectively. WinBug, the bug reporting tool, a new version of Windows Media Player, and the MS-DOS prompt are now included. Some new control panel options, some updated from Windows for Workgroup 3.11, have been introduced. However, with this build being a Milestone 4 build, there are some bugs. The floppy disk driver is bad and will display either nothing or garbage when trying to access the contents of a floppy disk. There's an icon for a program called Chat, but it doesn't lead anywhere. Build 73F is a Milestone 5 build that was compiled on November 23rd, 1993. A new setup has been introduced, having an actual background instead of the blue gradient of previous builds. Many apps, including the file cabinet, have been made into 32-bit apps. The taskbar no longer functions as a folder, but it functions as an actual taskbar. Minimize apps still appear above the taskbar though, and the folder taskbar can still be re-enabled. The login screen has also fixed the Windows for Workers mention. File cabinet is now called My Computer and has a new icon, and tracker and the warning screen don't show up at login. This build is also the first 9X build to have a shutdown screen, something that was previously exclusive to the NT line at the time. This screen looks a lot nicer than the boring orange text we got in the final. It's the Chicago boot screen, but with no Windows flags, and the moon replaces the light. Build 73G is an updated version of Build 73F. The under construction wallpaper no longer tiles. Build 81 is another Milestone 5 build compiled on January 19th, 1994. Both 73F and 73G have a conjoined start menu and button. It's disabled by default and there's no UI to enable it. Build 81 is the first available build to have it enabled by default. Still looks like a regular context menu though. The window controls has also been finalized, now using the style from the final version, with the close button on the far right. Dr. Watson is also gone now. Yay. Build 99 is a Milestone 6 and pre-beta 1 build compiled on May 9th, 1994. The boot screen has been updated saying Beta 1, May 1994. A video now plays called Welcome.avi, really pushing the graphical capabilities to its limits, and the Control Escape shortcut has been introduced to open the start menu. Build 122 is the official Beta 1 build, compiled on June 10th, 1994. Not much has changed since 99, but the sample movie of a Windows server has been removed. Build 189 is the official Beta 1.4 build, compiled on September 21st, 1994. The new Windows 95 branding is here, although it still says Chicago in some places. The final setup background is here, and the Windows key support is here. We have a new start menu which wasn't featured in the final release. It also looks cooler than the final version. Build 224 is the official Beta 2 build, compiled on November 3rd, 1994. Wastebasket has been renamed back to Recycle Bin, and the start menu looks similar to its final design. This one also contains an early version of the Getting Ready to Run for the First Time screen. Build 310 is a pre-Beta 3 build compiled on January 12th, 1995. It has a new boot screen that says Test Release, January 95. This is also the last build that requires a beta site ID and password to install. Build 347 is the official Beta 3, or final beta release, build of Windows 95. Compiled on March 2nd, 1995. We got new banners during the file copy process, never seen in the final version. We almost have the final getting ready screen, but it's a different font. We have a new boot screen, very similar to the final version, with a few differences. Besides the obvious final beta release text, this version uses a different clouds background, having more clouds than the final. We also have a different loading animation, with 3 arrows homing in on the Windows flag logo. Build 468 is a May test release build, compiled on May 10th, 1995. The file copy banners have been changed again. This time they're a lot more colorful. I really wish they kept these in. The boot screen now resembles the final version, apart from the May test release text. The shutting down and getting ready screens are also now finalized. The safe to shut down screen is almost finalized, but it uses a different font. Build 499 is a June test release build, compiled on June 21st, 1995. This pretty much just looks and feels like the final version, besides the boot screen having the June test release text. Finally, the RTM build 950 R6, was compiled on July 11th, 1995, released in manufacturing on July 14th, and officially launched on August 24th. However, it wasn't originally going to launch on this date. At first, they planned to launch it in April 1994. Then this was pushed back to September 1994. What's interesting is, in Build 90C, there's a mention of Windows 94 in the setup, showing that Windows 95 was originally going to launch in 1994. The date was pushed back again to March 1995, and finally, August 1995. All these pushbacks were because Microsoft was being a jackass and getting an antitrust case against them. But it didn't matter because Windows 95 had a big launch, with a marketing campaign estimated at $1 billion. It started off with a more than hour-long launch event featuring Bill Gates and Jay Leno. There, we got to see the new commercial for Windows 95, featuring the 1981 single by the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up. A nod to the start button. Later on, we also got this promotional VHS tape that features Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry, labeled as a cyber sitcom. Microsoft even went as far as buildings. The Empire State Building in Manhattan was lit in red, green, blue, and yellow, and a giant 100-meter-long banner was hung up on the CN Tower in Toronto, Canada. There was also a fun stuff folder on the CD, featuring the game Hover, a trailer for the movie Rob Roy, and music videos for Good Times by Eddie Brickell and... Now, if you thought 1,000,000 in 1 year was crazy, if you thought 1,000,000 in 3 months was insane, if you thought 1,000,000 in 1 month was ridiculous, 4 fucking days. That's right, Windows 95 sold 1,000,000 copies in 4 days. And by the end of 1998, Windows 95 had 57.4% of the OS market share. Microsoft also sold a companion product with Windows 95, Microsoft Plus 95. If you bought this for an extra $50, you got themes, Dry Space 3, Compression Agent, the very first version of Internet Explorer, and... Windows 95 also had some updates. Build 950A is OSR 1, or Service Pack 1, compiled on December 31st, 1995, and released on February 14th, 1996. It was really nothing but bug fixes, and was available in 2 forms. You could get it as Service Pack 1, or OSR 1, standing for OEM Service Release 1. This was a special release of Windows 95, only installable by OEMs that had SP1 included. 950A would be the only update available via Service Pack, as the update after this one would only be available if you bought a machine with one of these updates pre-installed. Build 1111 is the RTM of OSR 2, compiled on August 24th, 1996, and released exclusively to OEMs on August 30th. This was a big update to Windows 95. It upgraded the MS-DOS version of 95 from 7.0 to 7.1. It introduced FAT32 support, IE3, DirectX, and Dry Space 3. Build 1212 is the RTM of OSR 2.1, compiled on October 23rd, 1996. It's basically the same thing as OSR 2, but now with the USB supplement. There was another compile of this build, Build 1214. It's the same thing, but now the USB supplement version number has been upped from 4.03.1212 to 4.03.1214. I gotta have this. Build 1216 is the RTM of OSR 2.5, compiled on November 26th, 1997. It introduces some web-based features from Windows 98 into 95, as Windows 98 was being developed around the time this released. We have IE4, Outlook Express 4, and Active Desktop. But all things must come to an end, as Microsoft killed off Windows 95 on December 31st, 2001, along with Windows 1.0, 2.0, okay, you get it. So now, let's take a look at the actual thing. There's 2 ways you can start the graphical setup. You could either boot off the actual CD or boot off a boot disk and then start setup from the CD. The former has you going through the same very blue setup from Windows 3.0, while the latter boots you into a mini copy of MS-DOS where you can run Fdisk and do other things while not booted off the hard disk. But eventually it will lead into this graphical setup. It looks very similar to the Windows NT 3.51 setup I took a look at in the last episode. Let's talk about the background here. It's a bunch of technology from the time, all stitched together, and it's very blue. The boot screen here is very nice looking. It's a cloudy background with the Windows flag tilted at a 30-degree angle. This art was also on the box, and a wallpaper in plus 95. After we get through that, we're at the desktop. This is radically different from Windows 3.1. Gone is the program manager, and in comes the Windows Explorer. The interface is a lot like Windows today. You got icons on the desktop that you double click on to get to a program, and single click to select. The taskbar is at the bottom, displays your running apps, the time, and the start menu. This was one of, if not the main feature of Windows 95. If you click on this here button, you get a little menu that shows you a list of options. Programs shows you, well, all of your programs. They're divided into groups similar to the program manager. If you hover over an option for a bit, it displays the contents in the folder you're hovering over. Documents, as the name implies, shows you your documents. Settings shows you the control panel, printer settings, and taskbar settings. Find lets you find files or folders. Help is help, run is run, and shut down lets you shut down. The recycle bin is also a Windows tradition that started from Windows 95, although macOS had it first. You can put files in it if you don't want them anymore, sort of like purgatory. You can either restore one or more of the files back to where they came from, permanently delete one of the files, or all of them. The window controls are now here, and they've stayed in Windows ever since. The line is minimized, the square is maximized, and the X is closed. And that is Windows 95, a revolutionary Windows version that set Windows into high gear and helped Windows come what it is today. However, there is one major flaw that holds it back from being the best piece of software of all time. There's no Japanese singing toilet included with every purchase.